They called him the Messiah, a white man in the desolate Australian outback. His followers, drawn from across the globe, believed he was the divine answer to a dying world. But within the isolated commune, a far darker truth began to unfold, far from the eyes of civilization. This is the story of the family of love, a group that promised spiritual enlightenment but delivered manipulation, abuse, and a chilling vision of racial purity. Our investigation takes us deep into the red heart of Australia, to a place where a self-proclaimed prophet, a man named Jeremiah, held absolute sway over his devoted flock. Jeremiah, born William Murray, was a charismatic but deeply troubled individual. His origins were humble, yet he harbored grand, apocalyptic visions that would eventually draw hundreds to his cause. In the early 1960s, Murray began to preach his unique brand of Christian fundamentalism, mixing it with prophecies of an impending global catastrophe and a specific, unsettling racial ideology. He declared himself the Messiah, a divinely appointed leader chosen to gather a select group of pure white people to survive the coming apocalypse. This was the foundation of his family of love. His followers, often disillusioned or searching for meaning, were convinced by his fervor and his promises of salvation. Many sold their possessions, severed ties with their families, and handed over their entire lives. The group first established themselves in Queensland, but seeking even greater isolation and control, they eventually moved to a remote property near the town of Agnes Water in the late 1960s. This was their promised land, a secluded haven far from the corruption of the outside world. Here, Jeremiah's word was law, and his authority went unchallenged. Life within the family of love was strictly regimented. Daily routines revolved around prayer, communal work, and Jeremiah's lengthy sermons, which reinforced his control and their isolation. Children born into the cult were taught only what Jeremiah deemed necessary. Education was minimal, designed to indoctrinate them into his worldview and prevent any outside influences. But the deeper you look, the more disturbing the details become. Jeremiah's teachings were not simply about spiritual purity. They were laced with explicit racism and a perverse sense of racial hierarchy. He preached that white people were superior, the chosen race, and that all other races were inferior. This ideology justified a rigid internal structure and a profound distrust of anyone not within their fold. Financial control was absolute. All possessions, earnings, and savings were surrendered to Jeremiah. Members worked tirelessly for the commune, receiving no personal income or even individual recognition. The psychological manipulation was pervasive. Doubts were met with gaslighting and threats of eternal damnation. Members were constantly reminded of their privilege to be part of the chosen few. Then came the allegations of physical and sexual abuse. Former members bravely recounted stories of beatings, public humiliations, and systemic sexual exploitation, particularly of women and children. These acts were often justified by Jeremiah as divine discipline or necessary for spiritual purification. The victims, isolated and brainwashed, had nowhere to turn. The outside world, however, began to take notice. Whispers turned into concerns, and concerns into investigations. Local authorities received reports, but the cult's remoteness made intervention difficult. It wasn't until the 1980s that a significant breakthrough occurred. Several members, risking everything, managed to escape and bravely came forward with their harrowing testimonies. Their accounts painted a chilling picture of abuse, control, and fear. The stories were horrific, detailing a systematic pattern of cruelty disguised as religious devotion. Jeremiah, the white man's Messiah, was finally brought to justice. He faced charges related to assault and other serious offenses, though the full extent of his crimes may never be truly known. The family of love eventually dissolved, its members scattered, many bearing deep psychological scars. The children, now adults, faced the immense challenge of integrating into a world they knew nothing about. The legacy of Jeremiah and his cult serves as a stark reminder of how easily faith can be twisted, how isolation can breed extremism, and how the promise of salvation can become a cage. The family of love stands as a dark chapter in Australia's history, a cautionary tale echoing from the silence of the outback. Next, we unravel the mysteries behind the infamous Heaven's Gate cult.